That's right. So clap our hands, and we'll begin what we're going to have as being our initial attempt, or not attempt, it'll be our initial podcast.
Yes.
And so the question becomes, why are we doing a podcast? Right?
Yes.
Now, what is your motive for helping to do a podcast and produce one?
Well,
where did we meet?
I'll give you.
I'm Walker. My name is Walker Chandler,
and my name is Elliot Coker. Well, Ed, we're both heavily involved with scouting, and I have been for a long time. And I used to go when I was young to a camp called Camp Thunder down in Molina, Georgia. And I would go there for summer camp programs. And sometimes during those summer camp programs, Mr. Chandler would dress up as Lord Robert Baden-Powell, was the founder of Scouting, and we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Oh, we'll get into everything.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
And I've known of him since I was really young, so I knew about you for a long time. Mm-hmm. And recently we were at the winter camp, which is a little bit shorter program that's done while the kids are on break for winter, and or the Christmas break rather, and because the winter break comes a little later. But I saw him there, and he gave me one of his cards, which I lost promptly before I even left camp, I believe. And he said that he would like to start a podcast, and I've got a podcast of my own, and I've done a little production here and there, and I've got far too much gear that I know what to do with. So I decided, he asked me for some help, and I decided to bring all my stuff and come help. So here I am.
So here he is. Now, as to me, obviously I've got a few years on me. I look like, as I got into my 50s, I started realizing that I looked a lot like Baden-Powell. And Baden-Powell was the founder of Scouting, and we'll show pictures of it or post one or something like that. And he was a famous British Army officer who became famous mostly because of his conducting the defense of a town called Mafeking. It was in the Boer War. It was up in the northern part of the British colony, and it was immediately invested and surrounded by 5,000 or 6,000 Boer troops. And they're kind of irregulars, but Boer is the Dutch word for farmer. And so at any rate, during the Boer War, he conducted a very intelligent and imaginative defense of the town. They had fake landmines that they'd go out and pretend like they were planting landmines, and they were just cigar boxes. And then they even had a little bit of dynamite, so they blew one up to make the Boers out there. And then they'd have guys act like they were stringing barbed wire, and so that the Boers would be deterred from attacking at certain places. And there were just a lot of interesting things he did, and you can read all about this, of course, on Wikipedia. And one of the things that they did in Mafeking is the boys of the town were enlisted, or they volunteered to be runners and to help out. And Baden-Powell was very impressed with the boys' diligence and their bravery. But at any rate, so I've been active in scouting since I was a Cub Scout at about the age of 6. And so I have an extensive background in it, including I went to the World Jamboree in Greece in 1963. And when I was there, I met a Swedish scout, and he and I have been great friends ever since. And so I went to visit with him. I hitchhiked to Montreal and took a freighter across to Europe and then up to northern Sweden, and went to a scout camp with him, and we hiked in the high mountains and all that. And then I got into this Baden-Powell persona later on in life, and then realized his granddaughter was coming to the World Jamboree that was being held in West Virginia in 2019. So I went up there, and me and another fella acted the part of Baden-Powell at this campsite that had a British flag, and we had other people on our staff of about 30 who dressed up in 1907 clothes, because Baden-Powell and his colleagues came up with what they thought was a good plan for young people to form in patrols and to do camping and outdoor activities. And so what the purpose of these podcasts are going to be is to be an aid to scouting. And I don't mean just the official scouts of the United States or the United Kingdom or Kenya or wherever, but just the whole nature of scouting and outdooring and getting young people ready based on that great motto, which is
be prepared.
Yes, it is. And I was doing a big conference thing up at when I was Baden-Powell up at the World Jamboree, and this family came in and they had their Cub Scout son or daughter, whichever, but in the row, they're sitting in front of us, and I said, now what is the Cub Scout motto? And that little boy said, do your best. And that's a great thing for children to think about. And that's one of the things I really like about scouting is you're repeating mottos and slogans and the scout law all the time, and it becomes a part of who the young person is. And so I think so I've talked too much, but
no.
You have children in scouting now, don't you?
I do have children in scouting now. I've got a 14-year-old, an 11-year-old, and I've got a 4-year-old, and as soon as she turns 5, we'll be getting her into the Cub Scouting program as well. I've also been involved in scouting since I was very young. I believe I was 7 when I got involved as a wolf Cub Scout. I didn't start out in tigers. I don't remember exactly why I didn't start out in tigers, but I come from a scouting family as well, and I started in wolf and went all the way up, and I joined Boy Scouts, and then I got my Eagle Scout in December of 2015, I believe it. Yeah, 2015. So now I'm grown and I've got kids, and I married into those first 2. So if you've done the math, I got my Eagle Scout in 2015, which puts me, I'm about 27 now. Not about, I am 27 now. And I married into 2 kids a little bit older. So this past October, we got involved with a troop out of McDonough, Georgia, and have been enjoying our time there since. And that winter camp that you and I officially met at, and that was their first residence camp. So that was the first time they'd been out for more than 3 days or something like that. We've always done several family campouts, though. That's something that we like to do in the fall and the wintertime a lot. And so now that we're involved in Scouts, it's just another excuse to go camping a little bit. It's not just
an excuse.
But,
in fact,
I do enjoy it.
And I tell people, they say, well, it's a lot of commitment. Well, having children is a commitment.
Yeah.
And so this gives a structure for people to have help and not just, like the Tiger Cubs. I remember when they first started that, and my kid was just the right age, and so we started, and all it is kind of a play group. And it's easy. I remember one lady says, well, I'll help with the program. And so her program the next week was she brought some buttons, needles, and thread, and some scraps of cloth. And so the Tiger Cubs, it was the first time most of them had ever sewn on a button on anything. But it's a simple thing. But it was coordinated. And I used to be when my boy was a cub, I'd take him on a walk, just a long walk through the woods, and we'd just talk about things and do things. And if you're going to have children, almost all adults understand if you got children, you need to spend time with them.
And that reminds me, Melody, my wife, she says a lot of times, it's not about the quantity of the time, because in today's society, if you're a married couple, generally speaking, you need 2 incomes to support a household these days, or at least in a lot of people my age, and in my case, I know that is true for us. So you can't always spend a whole lot of time, but it is about the quality of the time that you are able to spend. And I think, in my experience, the time spent in scouting, doing scouting activities, the camping, of course, I've already said I really enjoy camping. The whole family does, but the meeting times. They have reasons to spend time with us to do requirements, merit badges. And I think that's a time better spent than, just watching TV or,
Gosh,
or
yes.
something like that.
Well,
Which we do a lot of movie watching as a family as well. But
even then,
if
you watch the right kind of movies, I think that's important because of that picture's worth 1,000 words, and people can see what it was like. I mean, children just at the age of 4 are just beginning to realize that once upon a time people didn't have electricity. They didn't have cars. They didn't have airplanes, and there's always that chance. You watch one of those survival movies, for example, when the airplane crashes and the kid is out there in the wilderness all by himself or herself, and she has to survive. And so those survival techniques, we get up there. Baden-Powell, I like to, when I'm in that persona, I call everybody calls me Baden-Powell, and he says to the scouts there, even the 10-year-olds, say, listen, this is all very serious business. Now, it's disguised as a game, but it's very serious. And if you don't think it's serious, think about the skills you're learning. And first aid is not about getting a little badge or something. It's about somebody you love might be bleeding to death on the kitchen floor. And are you going to just call 911 and watch them bleed out and die? Or are you going to try to do something? And are you going to know what to do?
Yeah.
And are you studying it? Or life-saving or wilderness survival? Swimming.
Just swimming.
Just swimming properly.
And it's not, and it's, some people think, well, I don't know how to swim and I don't care to learn. You never know when you might need to know how to swim.
Well, I've noticed a lot of children, they also don't, if left to their own devices, many of them do not understand that swimming is a matter of getting more and more and more perfect in your swimming. I tell people that unless they're crippled, unless a person has a real crippling condition that would prevent them from doing so, at the age of 18 years of age, 18 to 20, when they're really in their physical prime or should be, they need to be able to run, maybe not fast, 15 miles. And they need to be able to swim 5 or 10 miles. And you can't do it if you got your head out of the water and if you're using the bad technique, because it's so inefficient that you just wear yourself out. I saw some people here doing a triathlon, and so they were going to do the 50 miles on a bike, and they were going to do a 5-mile run, and they had to do just a half-mile swim, but their swimming technique was so poor that they couldn't do it. And if you can't swim 5 miles, you're not a good swimmer. And the scouts have a mile swim.
I could swim across a pool pretty quick, but 5 miles might be a bit much.
Well, you think?
But I did have to do it at one point, and
sure.
I did do it.
Well, you look at the PT 109. Do you know that story?
No.
Well, that's where Robert Kennedy was a PT captain in World War II. And one night, a Japanese destroyer just cut right through their PT boat, cut it in half, and it sank. So 5 men, or however many it was, were out there, and he and another guy, they had to swim the 5 miles or whatever it was over to another island. And when I took swimming merit badge, you had to learn how to inflate your pants. You by tying off the legs and putting air in them, because you have to. What happens if you're going to be out there for 30 hours and you have to sleep? I saw where a Marine fell off some kind of a ship and was out there for the 30 hours, the 2 days, but he inflated his pants because he knew what to do. And so that's where these are just little examples. We want kids all around the world, and their parents, maybe more importantly, to understand that this is serious business.
Do you remember when somebody asked Baden-Powell about the motto, be prepared, and they said, well, what is it you should be prepared for? Do you remember what he said?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite lines to tell people about be prepared.
And it was the
Any
answer.
old thing.
Any old thing. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's and you know, I tell people that, for example, first aid is something that you, every time you're, even my age, you pick up a book and there's some kind of a first aid thing that you don't know, you try to learn it.
Yeah.
It's just that whole life habit of learning stuff, because you need to be prepared, and you need to. I tell people that, as Baden-Powell, I tell people that I think the Americans overemphasize Eagle Scout, and what they should emphasize is first class Scout. And because you want our kids, boys and girls, to be first class Scouts and first class citizens. You know, that's one thing I tell people, and we're going to probably, in these podcasts, we'll do a lot of repetition.
Most likely, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But I tell them that somebody of their generation, when I'm looking at a bunch of 12-year-olds, I say to them, somebody is going to be in charge someday. Now, it's either going to be people like you who have a Scout law, a Scout motto, who are prepared, who have skills, who know what to do, or it's going to be people who the only thing they know how to do is be tyrants and otherwise control you and use whatever means they have.
That people that weren't given the structure of the Scout Oath and the Scout Law, you know, the things that we have in scouting.
Yes. It's during World War II, there were, back in the old days, you had to learn, to get first class, you had to know Morse code, or at least one of the forms of signaling at a distance. And during World War II, there were any number of men that had to fall back on their Scout knowledge to use flashlights and the like to signal over long distances. You know, what do you do if your cell phone fell into the lake, you know, and your friend is 5 miles away? What do you do? Yeah. If you can see him, but you can't yell.
It's so at work, at the other job that I have, I was talking to one of the managers there, and he was asking about my scouting experience, and he had asked, I had asked him, I said, do you know how to start a fire without a lighter or a match? And he said, no, but I always have my lighter on me. I said, well, what if it runs out of fuel? Would you know what to do with it? And he said, well, I could probably figure something out. I said, I don't have to figure it out. I said, I could do it. I could do it with sticks. I could do it with more than a lighter. Or if your lighter's even broken, I could still use your lighter to do it, because I learned those techniques and those skills through my time in Scouts.
Well, that's one thing I was thinking about these podcasts, is that we could get some guy who's just an expert at making fire with a bow and a stick, or flint and steel, or other methods. Oh, yeah. And we could split screen that, or we could and he could talk about it, or a person who's good at marksmanship, or any other subject like that. So it's not just us talking.
Yeah. And another thing we have is the resource of the viewers and the listeners.
Well, that's
of
exactly,
the podcast.
And that's what we want to do. Is we will have, for now at least, we'll have my website shown, and y'all can look at the website and just see stuff about me. And
it's WalkerChandler.com.
There we go. Ah, that's it. And then it's Walker at WalkerChandler.com if you want to send an email. And so we'll, and of course that, I hope, once we get this takes off, we'll have to come up with something else. Otherwise, my email will be crowded up.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure that out. But it will be nice to have people all around. For some reason, I keep thinking I want to have a podcast with the head scout of Kenya, because Kenya is where Baden-Powell had a lot of his life and his enjoyment, and that's where he ended his life. I believe it was in Kenya, where that last place was. But
we'll get our producer behind the scenes to look that up.
Yeah, well, that's right. That
guy right over there.
But in Kenya, I've heard that they have a tremendous explosion of scouting, and I want scouts from all over the world to be watching this and enjoying this, because I want them to understand how important what it is they're doing is, and to get their father in there and say, Dad, you need to listen to this, because you need to be more supportive of what we're doing for my little brother, my little sister. That's one thing that the Americans they lagged about the whole issue of girls in scouting.
I was wondering when we were going to get into that portion, because I didn't think it would be the first episode, but since you're cracking that egg open, I would like to comment on that.
Well, you go ahead. I can comment on it and say that the rest of the world has had the two together. They're not in the same troop. They're not in the same tents. I mean, like nobody's watching or whatever. Yeah. But throughout the world, when I went to Sweden in 1966, they were, and they needed, girls need what scouting has, and if the Girl Scouts of America will provide the kind of outdoor rough program. Rough is, to me, rough's important, because I tell people, they say, oh, my little boy can't go camping this weekend, it's going to rain and snow. And I say, well, that's exactly the time he needs to go.
Yeah.
And that's when she needs to go.
Yeah.
Car camping is not camping.
Right.
You might be outdoors and the weather's nice and all that, and you're cooking on on the tailgate of your truck,
on the Coleman grill.
Yeah, the Coleman method.
Yeah.
But we need to be able to live and work. We need to be able to slaughter animals and feed ourselves, to hunt and feed ourselves. When people say, and when I say it's serious business, I say, what about your fellow scouts that are fighting through the winter in the Ukraine? You think they don't need to know camping, wilderness survival, first aid, marksmanship, citizenship in the nation, all those things that scouts have? And it's just, so here we are. And so I thank you so much for helping me get this off the ground.
I'm going to do my best.
Like a good Cub Scout. Yeah. Yes, there you go.
So, to go back a little bit about the girls.
Yes.
I've had conversations with more than 5 people, I would say. Less than 10, but more than 5. That have had a little bit of a disagreement about allowing girls to be into the, well, I'm going to say Boy Scouts program.
Yeah.
It's called Scouts BSA, I believe, or Scouting America now, I believe is the exact name for it. And most of those people had a bit of a negative feeling about it. And my explanation, and the reason that I like it and I'm okay with it, is because even back when I was a Wolf Cub Scout, the siblings came along, because everyone didn't always have, for scout nights and for, we always met on Tuesdays. Let me know what night of the week y'all meet in the comments.
That's great. That's a good idea.
And we always met on Tuesdays, and in Cub Scouts, the sisters were coming. The sisters were coming to the meetings, and they would, if they weren't being kept in another corner or back at the table with a parent who wasn't paying much attention anyways, they would do their best to, no pun intended on do your best once again, to come over and join and do what we're doing. And eventually, everybody just relented and just let them come do what we're doing. We had the Pinewood Derby, or the sailboat race, you know what I'm talking about? Rain gutter regatta.
Yes.
The siblings were allowed to do those things, and they were allowed to come do all the things we're doing, be in the same places we're doing, but the sisters never earned the badges. They never got their belt loops. They didn't get to get their activity pins. Now they can, and now they get to share the uniform that we all wear, and they get to earn those badges, and I think that's got quite a bit to do with the confidence. Now, Girl Scouting it's a different entity, it's a different thing, and they have a different program, and it is for people. There's people that enjoy that, and that's good, and you should. But the program that's offered for Cub Scouting, and then later on for Scouting, it's just a little bit different. And you were saying rough, and what we need, what young people, I'm a parent now. I keep forgetting that fact, but what young people need is that rough and ruggedness. Now I'll say, I did, what year was it? I guess it was 2013, maybe 14. I did the National Advanced Youth Leadership Experience, which is the step above National Youth Leadership Training, which is done at the council level, and NAIL, National Advanced Youth Leadership Experience, is done at the national level. Mm-hmm. And it was the first year that they were running that program up at Northern Tier in Minnesota.
Oh, you got to go there.
And
wonderful.
I got to go there, and it was rough because the program was good. You know, I was familiar with all the leadership programs.
Was it winter or summer?
It was summer, but it was up in Minnesota, so it was like 65, 68
Were
degrees.
the mosquitoes out?
It's their state bird, I'm sure. I'm sure. You couldn't breathe without getting one. And you had to almost wear a mask.
When I was in northern Sweden, going through Lapland, you get down in those low valleys and you could clap your hand and you'd kill mosquitoes.
Mm-hmm. Every time. You had to be covered up completely. If you didn't want to breathe them in, you had to just wear a bandana or something like that.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
But one thing that a lot of people don't even know is that I try to remind people. I tell parents and scouts, I say, when you're a scout, you own this Camp Thunder. You own the Northern Tier. And they go, what's that? You own Philmont Scout Ranch. You own the Sea Base down in Florida where they go sailing on the ocean. You own that place up in West Virginia. And since you own it, don't drop trash on it. Take care of it. Be proud of it.
Yeah.
Use it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when someone says to own it, it's another another double entendre is take responsibility for it as well. It's not just that it's yours and yours to do what you please with. It's yours to take responsibility for.
Well, that's one of the problems of communism and socialism. I say is that when everybody owns it, nobody owns it.
Yeah, and the responsibility is relieved. You're relieved of its responsibility almost.
Yeah.
Or at least in mind.
So you were up there in the summer. How long was it? 10-day?
It was a shorter program than what you'd normally go up there and do. But they gave us the heaviest canoes, right? And they gave us the heaviest big backpacks to take out there. And I'm a big guy now, as you can see. I've always been a big guy. Even when I was young, 14 years old, I was almost 6 foot and 200 something pounds all the time. So in my patrol, there were some smaller guys that could not handle the weight of the canoe. And then when we get a few miles back into this backcountry, and have you been to Northern Tier?
I've not been there, nor have I been to Philmont.
I haven't been to Philmont either.
Gosh.
The only high adventure bases is that I've been to is Northern Tier. And I'm lucky to have gone. But at the time, I've got the big backpack on, and a couple miles in, one of the smaller got. What it is, it's a little hill here, and then a big lake, and then a little hill here, and then a big lake. And based on whatever route that you're going to take, depends on how many times you're going to have to pull up on shore, get out of the canoe, put everything in the pack, put the backpack on, put the canoe on your back, and hike over this little hill.
Yeah.
So because I'm a big guy, not because I'm a very tough or very strong guy, but because I'm much bigger, I tend to be a little stronger than most of the other kids that were there with me, or my patrol mates that were there with me. And one or two of them got tired, so I had to take on their responsibility. And when it was rough, and at the time, I was not having a good time with it because I was exhausted. We'd get out, we'd put it out, get back in the water, paddle for a couple miles, get out, do the same thing, and I'm paddling the whole time as well,
Yeah.
And it was rough. And it was only on the flight back home that I thought to myself, I was ticked off the whole time, but that was probably the most fun I think I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
I think it was. And it's because it was rough. It was because it was hard, and you can't learn something I don't know where it comes from, but what I've heard a lot, especially from my dad, was that scouting is fun with a purpose. You've heard that?
That's a great way to put it.
It's
yes.
fun with a
fun
purpose.
with a purpose.
And sometimes it's rough, but that turns out to be fun too. You know, I look back on some of the experiences that I had, some of the campouts that I've been that it rained the whole time. It was raining before we got there. It was clear skies on the drive down there, and then when we finally get there, it starts raining.
Yeah.
And it didn't rain till Sunday afternoon when we're packing up to leave. And that's when it stopped raining. As soon as we got everything in the trailer. Those times were rough, but the bonds and the friendships that you make during those rough times make it worth it,
Back in the old days, not old days, it wasn't so long ago, at West Point, the new cadets that came in, number one, a whole lot of them had been scouts. When it was all men, it was all scouts, or lots of them. But they said on those first summer bivouacs and all they would take them out on, you could tell the difference between the scouts and the ones that didn't have that background.
It's obvious to me now as an adult, just working in everyday life, that wow, they didn't have a program even close. You weren't in anything like I was in, were you? I think that, of course, on the inside.
Yep.
And that's why I kind of agreed to help do this, because the scouting messages and the experience need to be shared with. I think there's not anybody I can think of that wasn't in the program that definitely would have benefited from being in the program.
And then you think, I was thinking again about girls, but I remember there was this one boy in my age bracket that on his first camp out, his father went with him, and the boy had childhood polio or something, so he was fairly crippled, and his father was going to carry his backpack for him, and the assistant scoutmaster we had, that was a World War II veteran, said, no, don't do that for him. And so the boy carried his own stuff, and it was not easy, but that boy was so proud of it. And the father realized the benefit that for the boy's heart, that he was able to do it.
Yeah.
And people overcoming adversity is just something that's so important, and there's no reason why girls should not go through the same thing, because they need. We think about the pioneer women. I mean, what people are called on to do is there's. It may be them, it may be some 11-year-old girl that comes to the scene of a serious wreck, and because she's the only person there that knows what to do, she needs to take control and do it. Whether it be traffic control, directing other people, telling them don't take that person, move that person around because they might have a broken neck and you might paralyze them for life. Even that 11-year-old girl, and that's one of the things I wish scouts would wear their uniforms more. Because it's almost like a police officer.
Well, you noticed me at winter camp.
Yeah.
I hardly took it off.
Well,
I wore it all the time.
Well, you should.
Yeah.
And I noticed, and I've noticed the scouts are getting better.
Yeah.
They went through a period in the 70s and 80s where they weren't wearing, and I thought that
the Class Bs, those red collared shirts that everyone was wearing, right?
Yeah, and I thought the little red hats. You don't look like a scout if your enemy can see you from a mile away.
That's true. That is true.
I mean, I think of scouting, and that's one of the things that's interesting. I think I loaned you that book called Aids to Scouting.
Yeah, the original.
The original one that Baden-Powell wrote was to help young men who are basically city slickers understand what scouting was, to actually scout out the enemy. And it took things. They used to do a lot of these observation games where you get like Kim's game, where you have 12 things and you uncover them, and the boy's got 30 seconds, and then you put it back down and see how many of those objects he can remember. And so the observation, and then trustworthiness. You send a guy out as your scout, and he's too scared to get killed or captured, he might not go out there. He might come back and report something that you lose the whole war because he was too scared to do his duty. And so forth. It just goes on and on about scouting, and that aids to scouting people can find it on the internet now. That a PDF of the original aids to scouting, and it takes maybe an hour or two to read it. But if
I can find a link to it, I will link it in the description of this.
Sounds
podcast.
like a good idea. We hope to do that a lot with links, and if we say something, like like the Scout Law, we'll put it down. We could have it be an over thing where people could watch it, or off to the side, where and I have that series I did years ago where Baden-Powell is in front of a Scout statue. Maybe we can have links to that, or.
We can. Yeah, we'll get everything organized in the right way, and in the way that works best as well.
And that works best.
We'll be prepared for whatever.
And
happens.
Of course, in your comments, you can always send emails, or you can make comments and say, "I think it'd be better if you did so and so." Like, for example, if you
we're open to suggestions.
Yeah, if we wore a black tie, with a tuxedo,
or maybe we could wear our uniforms.
We could wear, or I could dress. I could put on my Baden-Powell costume, or something like that. At least sometimes. We thought about having these podcasts be Baden-Powell doing the podcast, but then we thought, no, that's just people. We and other people said, no, might start seeming like we're just acting, and we're not just acting.
No, I think it's there's places for that, and there's some of the videos that you've done already. I think that's the right way to use Baden-Powell. I think.
Yeah.
Like in the video, if you look back in the channel, you'll see the one about religion and scouting, and I think those types of videos and that type of content is something that you should continue to do. But I think this is more genuine is not the right word that I was looking for, but it's a word that I think fits a little bit, because it's about us, and it's about you as a man and your history in scouting itself. And me,
you as a man and a father and a former scout and a scouter. They call it a scouter. It's the adults that lead it. And we'll get people like Tricia on here who
she would be a great guest
and women who have actual experience. One thing that's pretty interesting about this Girls in the Scouts America, or whatever it's called now, Scouts BSA, is girls actually are, as most people know, are more mature
at an earlier age.
At an earlier age, and they hit it and get badges and stuff like that, and they've done very well in this program. But I want to make sure that they get the tough experience too. But of course, I've seen them at the World Jamboree. There was about 36,000 scouts there. About 35 or 40% of them were girls, and they were out there doing everything. Maybe not as many of them on the dirt bikes, but what do you call that?
The
bicycles,
the BMX ones?
BMX,
yes, yeah,
because they have more sense than boys have.
Yeah, I've never. Obviously, I'm not much of an athlete, and I never really have been either.
Yeah,
but
they were. It was interesting at the World Jamboree. That was the first time that they'd had shooting sports. The World Jamborees occur every 4 years. National Jamborees occur every 4 years also, but they're staggered. So the year that you have a World Jamboree is not the one that you have a National Jamboree. But at any rate, they had shooting sports there, and you had about 500 of these American NRA type people who were conducting safe shooting, and they were using high-powered rifles, not just 22s, plinking it, or air rifles and that kind of stuff. They were using 308s and 227s, and
wow,
and kids from all over the world were waiting hours to get to shoot real guns.
I think I would do that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they were using 9mm pistols and skeet shooting and that sort of thing. Another thing about scouting I think that's great is it introduces the child to all these different things, and one of those things may turn out to be a lifelong interest of his or hers. Like, for example, at Camp Thunder, we have a welding program now.
Yes.
And a metalworking,
blacksmithing, yeah.
Blacksmithing and welding, and so some of the best welders are girls, 12-year-old girls, and so I think that's great. And then of course we have archery, and every child should learn archery, if only just an introduction to it. And of course every child should learn firearms, because if only so they can be safe. And I tell them, I say, it's not just about the badge. You may have to defend your life, or hunt for your family someday. You need to be able to hit what you're shooting at. You might have to defend your country someday. And so you need to be able to do it. Or for that matter, if you see people, your fellow children out there mishandling guns, you need to know what to do to step up and make sure nobody gets shot by accident. I mean, I had a friend of mine that shot himself in the leg with a .38, just showing it to his friends, and I mean, really,
you have to be prepared.
Be prepared.
You have to be prepared
for
any old thing.
I think we're going to hear that from you a good bit.
I love a good callback. I really enjoy a good callback to something like that.
All right. Well, do you think we've done enough for this first time?
I think this was a good first run.
I think it was a real good first run.
And I'm looking forward to the second run.
All right. And all right. Sounds good. And we hope y'all will send emails, put comments, whatever, so we can get better and better and better. Because what we want, again, is for people all over the world we want scouting to expand so that young people who need it will get it, and their parents will support it because they get it. They understand how important this is for their kids to get this well-rounded thing that scouting offers. Whether that scouting be under some kind of church thing like the Royal Rangers, remember that? The Baptists had something, or this thing called Trail America, or the Girl Scouts of America, or the Boy Scouts of Kenya, or whatever. We want to help. And with your help, we will help. Okay?
Okay. Good show.
Good show. Thanks. Appreciate it, Elliot.
Absolutely.